This is a build report of Dragon kit number 6479. This is a T-34 76. So in this context, the 76 refers to the 76 millimeter gun. And this is a number 112 factory, some Russian place, late production version. So I'm going to go through the instructions here and point out some issues that I had that might be useful to you if you decide to build this kit. So we'll just get started with the front page here. So what Dragon usually does is on the first page they lay out all the parts, and then anything highlighted in blue means we're not going to use it. So on this particular kit, you can see maybe almost a fourth of the parts we're not going to use. So let's start at page 1. And for the most part, I'm just going to point out things that I had a problem with, or were confusing, or I really, really didn't like, or really, really did like. So the first problem I had was this piece number U1. So there's just kind of this piece that is supposed to go. I'm going to take this apart so it doesn't fall off. According to the instructions, it just kind of goes in here. So the problem with that is there's all these bolts already in here, and there's no like marker or like slot or anything to put it in. It just kind of is there. So I was trying to figure out what this piece actually is. I started looking at the box and I noticed it shows up in this picture. It says new track guards, and it has a picture of this. So I'm not sure if this is a track guard or if this picture is really of like this part and this is the new track guard and this is just incidentally here. But it might be a new track guard. So I still didn't really figure out what to do with it. I could just stick it in there, but since the tracks are gonna, the tracks are gonna go across here and cover it up, I'm just gonna leave it off. Actually, I have it right here. So I don't know what this is or why I should use it. I looked at some reference pictures. It's really hard to see in that spot, so I couldn't find any examples of what it is, so yeah, I'm going to leave it off. The next thing that was a little confusing is piece U9. So this I think is a tow hook, but it just says put it on here. It just kind of generically points at the center. So again, I looked at some reference photos, I looked at the box, and then eventually I found there's a picture on the box, but also the very last page of the instructions. Here it is. So to answer that question, it does go in the center, but not like this center, like the top, so just centered horizontally. Back to page 1. The only other issue I had on this page, so the suspension arms, there's all these nice slots they go in, but the fit isn't very snug. So if you're not careful, you might end up gluing them all at like strange angles. So I guess it's kind of too hard to see now, but kind of put them in and then put the wheels on to make sure it's lined up and then glue them. So some of them still like aren't 100% perfect. Once you put the tracks on, you're not going to be able to tell though. But if they would have made these fit more snug, this would have been a lot easier. So let's see, move on. Okay, well, last thing on this page, I think. This is another piece where it just kind of says put it on here. And I don't know if... how did I do this? So I think I guess I solved it by not putting it on. Yeah, so like I can't tell if this is to, like if these two bolts go on this side and the other two go on this side to like hold this on, or where this goes. So I guess I just never made a decision. So since it's on the bottom, you're not going to tell. But maybe they could have showed it on here or in a later picture, but I think this is the last time you see the bottom of this, so I'm not really sure what to do with that. Alright, that's it for page 1. Page 2. Page 2, the very first step is cut off the fenders. So it comes with these existing plastic fenders, and it just wants you to cut them off and replace them with these metal parts. So here's the metal parts. So I'm not sure, like one reason to do that would be the scale is off. Like these are very thick. So this is a 1/35 scale model. So the thickness of these in real life would correspond to like several inches thick of metal. That's just not right. Like the fenders were actually very, very thin. The other reason might be like these are the wrong version of fenders for this number 112 Russian factory variant of this kit, and the plastic ones just go on like this, whatever they happen to mold, but they're not right for this version. It could be both. So I decided to leave them on, and the main reason for this is, so first you have to just cut them off here, and I'm not sure how to do that like cleanly. I think it's going to leave like a bad edge and you're going to tell that it's just cut off. And I'm not sure how to attach the metal for the same reason. I think it's going to look obvious that like something weird was going on there, and that if you don't know what you're looking for, this is just going to look better. So I left that. Very next step 2. So you have 2 options for this back grill. So this grill goes over the engine here. Actually, this way. So there's this plastic version, and this would be easy to use, but it just looks really bad. So you can see this is not like a mesh, it's just a piece of plastic with like a texture on it. So you pretty much have to use this. And so the way you make this back mesh piece is it's actually 2 pieces. So the mesh or grill or whatever is one piece, and then the frame is another piece. And the problem with that is the frame is a slightly different size than like the mesh, and I don't know why they did that. So like if you try to like, ideally you would just put them on top of each other and then glue it, but you can't because they don't line up. So the frame is actually slightly bigger. So I don't know if you can see, but the frame overhangs the mesh a little bit on this side. I don't think you're going to be able to notice that once it's all on, but this would have been a lot easier if they just would have made them the same size. Another thing about the back here is, so this is hard to see, so I painted this black already, so that when you put this on, when I paint the rest of it later, like you can't see anything through it other than the black. Otherwise, like you might be able to see like the shiny, like this is metal, you might be able to see like the shiny gold through it, it wouldn't look right. But they want you to put this piece on here first, and I don't know why though. So the problem with that is, it's hard to see because of the black paint, but there's already a bunch of bolts on here. So they don't tell you to, but to get this to fit, you'd have to first cut all these existing bolts off. Then you're going to put this on, and the next thing that happens is there's like these guide holes here for these pegs. So when that fits in, it lines up and it holds it on. But that's going to get covered up by this, and it looks like maybe, glare here, maybe you can just punch this out and then that'll make the hole like there again, but it doesn't line up. And after all that, you can't see it because this is going to be on, so I don't know what the point of that is. So this is just, I don't see any consequences of just totally leaving that off, so I am. Another thing about this back is, well here, like, not sure if you can see, but this shows there's some kind of like little tiny notch here, which isn't on the kit. So the next step, like, these brackets show up. So it's just kind of like there all of a sudden, and I looked through all the parts and I didn't see anything that looked like that. But from then on, in most of the pictures, these brackets are there. Like, okay, it's still here. It's still here. Now it's not here anymore. It's not here. Can't tell if it's there. And it's not in like the final one at the end. It's just randomly in some of them. So I don't know if that bracket's supposed to be there or not. I guess not, since I couldn't find the parts for it. So that was confusing. Next, so for the grills or engine intake things on the top here, they give you the choice of 2 parts. And I thought I had an example of the other one. I guess I don't. I lost it. Oh, here it is. So you get your choice of either this version or the version that's on here. And so I mainly chose this version because, well, 1, it fit in the slot way nicer. And 2, just the way it looks is this looks a lot more like vents. So these are supposed to be vents that like go all the way to the inside. This one you can tell it just looks like a piece of plastic with ridges. It just doesn't look like a vent at all. So that's why. This, though, they left out, I guess, I'm not sure. There's these guide parts that go on the bottom here. You can't see because the top is on. But basically there's these parts that go on the bottom that like go here. So when you put this in, it like hits that part and stops it and keeps it lined up nicely. But they're not mentioned in the instructions. So parts E3 and E4, and I just happened, like I built a different Dragon kit, like a different T-34 earlier, and it had these. So I just happened to look in the parts, and the parts are there, and there's these slots on the bottom they fit into. So if you put parts E3 and E4 in, this makes putting these in a lot easier. Maybe like they just ran out of room in the instructions, and there's not they don't want to make a whole nother page to show the bottom of this. I don't know. Next, headlight. So the headlight has this massive piece of like plastic, like connector thing that connects it to the hull. It's like way too thick. So instead of them molding like a newer, better headlight, they just like give you this little piece of metal and they say just cut off the big piece of plastic on the bottom and glue this piece of metal on instead. So I didn't do that because like the headlight is like a curved piece and it's going to be really hard to like cleanly make the curve and cut it off. So what I did was I just cut the plastic way thinner. I don't know if this is focusing, but basically if you can see the white putty here, that's how thick it used to be, because there's a slot here that goes into. So I cut the plastic that much thinner and then filled in the slot with filler, so that looks a lot better, I think. And then this wire I added, I saw in some pictures like this bulge here is like a place where the wire exits to fit into the headlight. So this is just like a tiny metal phone wire I took out of like a phone cord. Next, this really bothered me. So in the front hatch here, there's periscopes under here, and these are like guards for the periscopes on like these hinges that open up and down. So if you look, it's pretty obvious, like there's a huge gap here. Like the blocks don't like reach this. They're like 20% too short. If you look at the picture here, they look like really long enough to go from the hinge to touch the hatch. And here, if you fit them into hinge, they don't reach the hatch. So I thought about having them open, but then like you have to paint the periscopes. I don't want to deal with that. Don't want to deal with that. So I just glued them on like this, and maybe it looks like they're just open up and they're like peeking out just a little bit, but that just seems wrong. And again, like I don't know, like this is not like this piece of plastic. Like they're just different sizes. Like what went wrong here? Next page. 7, 8. Okay. So for all these hooks here, you have to use these little metal pieces. And then the box calls these extra track links, but they're really, I think, ice cleats. They're like little things that go on like every few tracks. You bolt them on it, like gives it a better grip on the ice. So anyways, so they give you these metal straps to attach these, but I tried as hard as I could, but I couldn't get them to work. Like they're not quite long enough, and then you glue these hooks on, you try to put the strap through and try to stretch it around, and the hook breaks off, and you try again. There's like metal and plastic version of these, so I started with the metal and they kept breaking off. Then I glued the plastic ones on because the plastic will form like a better bond with the plastic. But they're thicker than the metal, and that makes the loops not fit even worse, so I just gave up on that. I have the ice cleats, I think, right here. Where'd they go? So I think what I'm going to do is just kind of set it in. Like that. So in real life, as soon as it went over a bump, those would all just fall out and fall off, but maybe I'll tie them on with a string or something, like they just used a rope. But I want to use something, because everything ended up like not being able to be on here because it didn't fit or I couldn't build it right. So I want to try to at least get these on. What else is on this page? This toolbox. So it comes with this toolbox, and like all the hinges are like not right or something. So they're like, just cut all the hinges off and put on these metal hinges instead. That's a lot of work I don't want to deal with. They could have just molded like the correct like bumps for hinges on instead of whatever these are. I don't know, maybe these are like a different version and they're right for some version. I don't know. So I did put these whatever you want to call them, brackets on that holds the toolbox on the hole. I think this looks okay. Looks fine. Part of that though is, so there's this piece already on here, or not piece, it's just like molded into the hole. And it makes it so this won't fit. It makes it look like the toolbox is like floating off the ground or floating off the hole. So you gotta scrape all that off. I scraped like all the edges off, and that was a big chore. I don't know what that was about. Cut this piece off. I don't know what that's for. Next, so this is like where the antenna fits in. This piece A10 doesn't look anything like the instructions on the real one. This piece is like way thinner, which is good, but I don't know why this looks like this huge cylinder in the instructions. After that, so there's a toolbox that goes on the other side, but the way it was molded, it just did not fit together at all. Here it is. So it's molded in these strange, like these all interlock. It's like, how many pieces? 1, 2, 3, 4. Like 5 pieces, and they all interlock in like this unusual way. And I'm not sure if the detail is showing up. It just doesn't look good, in my opinion. Like it just didn't fit together. It's like a little slanted. So I think I'm just going to leave this off. I'm going to paint it and see how it turns out. I did find some extra parts for like a slightly different looking toolbox. Like it's basically looks like the same thing but bigger. And I think this is like correct. Like in some pictures I've seen, like this, they started out with this big toolbox and then they later switched to the small one. I don't know, maybe they gave them less tools or just for less material. I like the size of the small one better. Like this big one looks almost a little out of proportion. But it's historically correct for at least some versions of this tank that was built around this time, so I might use this or might leave it off. Again, like a lot of stuff is just left off. I want to try to get something on there. Same thing with the brackets. The brackets that are on there aren't right or aren't good or whatever. I didn't want to deal with doing the metal, so I think it's fine. I think it's okay. Next, okay. The next problem I had is these spare tracks. So, in the instructions, back on the very first page, they give you like these special like spare tracks with like these bolts. There's like a bolt here and a bolt here. So usually, here's the bolt one actually. Where's like a normal one? So usually like these ones have these holes in them. So I think what this is trying to represent is you put a spare track on here and then it's like bolted on through these holes. And that's what this one is. It has like these bolts instead of holes. But the bolts are backwards, I think. So like in all the pictures, the flat side of the track like goes up, but they put the bolt things on the textured side, which is wrong. And then also they show where'd that picture go? Well, I'll show you on the box. Or I'm on the wrong page. Yeah, okay. Here we go. So they show that this has like holes. So the way these tracks like alternate, there's like one with like, it's called a guide horn, and then one with not a guide horn. So like they alternate between like I'm gonna call this a long one and a short one. So the long ones don't have holes in them. Like none of them have holes in them. If you look in the instructions later too, here's the picture of the tracks. Only the short ones have holes. So I don't know what this is trying to show, if I'm supposed to drill my own holes in it. But if you drill holes in it, then there's no bolts in it anymore. So like, I don't know what that represents. So what I ended up doing is I put 2 short tracks together with the bolt one on the top. So like maybe I'm just misinterpreting like what these are, but this part doesn't exist. This it just doesn't work like this. On the box they show a different version, like a different setup of this. They show like they bolt the short one there, and then this one just kind of rests up there, you know, because it's connected, it just kind of rests up there at an angle. But that's still not right because the bolts are on this side, and if you connect these at the angle like that, it's like wrong because one of the tracks is upside down because it's textured side, smooth side. Like this should be like this. I don't know. If this sounds confusing, it's because it is. So there's that. This. These, in some of the pictures, they have, like, these brackets on there, and some of them they don't. Like these U-shaped brackets. I ended up scraping them all off, because on the box they're not there. And in some of the instructions, they're here. I think they, like, disappear at times. Let's see, they're there. They're there. They're there. Maybe they don't disappear. In the final picture, they're not there. So, I don't know exactly what they are. Like, they might be, I don't know what they are. I don't know what they might be. Next, these pieces. Where does it say which ones they are? Whatever this one is, maybe on the previous page they said to put it on, but it doesn't match up with, like, what it really looks like. So here it has, like, there's a notch on one side, but in the instructions it just shows it as, like, one piece that's the same on both sides. So what I thought, this is my guess here, the notch is for when the turret is on, since there's a little, like, very little clearance here, so the notch is, like, here so that the turret can, like, rotate over it, like this. But I saw some pictures online of other people who built this, and they had the notch on the other side. So, I don't know. I think this makes the most sense to me, but I couldn't find, like, a real-life version of this, so I don't know. Maybe, like, it's supposed to, maybe, I don't know. So there's that. Turret. The turret actually turned out pretty good. So I only had, I guess, one big problem with the turret. So they give you this extra hatch, like they went way out of their way, like in the part list at the beginning. They give you just this R piece. So they, like, went out of their way to mold this special piece just for this. But there we go. Maybe it was just the one that I got, but it was molded, like, really badly. Like, I was, like, distorted, and, like, this piece was, like, not even formed right. It was, like, warped, so I just had to basically throw it away and use this other piece, this U piece, which I think is older. So it's just kind of strange the way it worked out, that they, like, went out of their way to, like, design this new part and mold it special just for this kit, and then just the quality of it was really bad. But again, it just could have been the one that I just happened to get. There were a few more smaller problems, though. It's like these hooks. So it says, like, this is C5, which means this is probably C5, and this is C5. But there's only two C5s in the parts. There's, like, another hook that looked almost the same, but not quite. There was a different number, so for one of the three, I used that. So I don't know if that was a typo of the instructions, or I'll assume it was a typo of the instructions. There's another on the back of the turret. Here we go. This piece, so there's this little dot piece here. They never say anywhere to put it on. But I noticed it, and I looked through the instructions, and this piece U7 looks just like this. So I put it on. So I'm 99% sure that's what you're supposed to do. Here it is. Looks correct according to the picture, but they never say to put it on. The box. Yeah, it's on the box, so I'm assuming that's the right thing to do. They give you some random parts of the interior. I just usually skip that, because you keep the hatch closed. I think it's better off overall, because like there's these chairs and these parts, but if you look all the way down, there's nothing else in there. So I think it just saves trouble to skip that. This here, if you can see, there's a huge gap between, like, this is like a weld seam here, like where this is welded on in real life, but there's like a huge gap in between the size of this and the size of that. So this white part here is like filler that I filled in, and I like scratched it up to make it look like this is one big weld. So here, the bottom too, all this white is just a big gap. That was okay. That's just like sort of normal stuff in my opinion. It does say like, oh, make sure you put these pieces on the bottom. But if you put them on, then it seems to like make the turret not quite be like fitting right. So I just left it off. You can't, like, it makes the clearance. So let's go on the back here, and then this goes here. It makes like the clearance, like hit stuff on the back when it rotates. So I just left that off, and you'll never know. But they went way out of their way to put on, like, oh, make sure to put on these parts you'll never see. But then they don't call out to put this on that you're going to see. So, whatever. The metal barrel is nice, so in the kit they have the option of using the plastic one. Don't use the plastic one, use the metal one. Looks good. That's it for this page. Next, here we go. Almost done. So this shows more detail, showing how the tracks like don't actually look in real life. This is another, like, there's a really badly molded on hook here. Just cut it off and then replace it with like a good looking hook. It's not labeled in the instructions. Well, oh, maybe it is P16. I don't know. I think this is referring to the tow hook. Somehow I found this piece and put it on. Okay, big complaint here. So this box thing on the back, which I thought was a storage box, but it's really actually just a big box-shaped fuel tank, like extra fuel tanks for the back. So I built them and they look fine, but then it's just like, put it on. And it doesn't say like how or where it lines up. Just put it on. Because there's like all these bolts here. So I started looking around for clues. Look at the box for clues. So here we go. It's like on the side of the box. And they're just kind of there. And I might have to add a picture of this later if this isn't showing up. But this whole back is not right. So like, it shows like this hook hooks onto like part of the fender here, but that's not how it is. Like, the back is like different. The fender, there's like no hook, there's like this bracket here instead of a flat spot. And then there's all these bolts here, so when you go to put it on, like these are all like, you know, like in the way. And then it looks like maybe you have to cut some bolts off, but it still doesn't match. It just does not match the box. So, like, until this point, like, I assumed, like, these renderings on the box were, like, these are, like, you know, the actual CAD drawings, like, that the molds are. But they must not be, because this is not right. It's just, maybe it's a picture from a different kit. I just don't know. Like, this is like a major differentiator of like, this particular variant had these big box fuel tanks and you can't actually put them on. So those are getting left off. This just shows up. So this is, it doesn't say what this is anywhere, like in the instructions. And I just happened to notice again, I was looking at the box actually right before I made this video. New jack block with realistic wood grain pattern. So this is a jack block. It does have a realistic wood pattern. It does look nice, but it just shows up, and there's like no hooks or anything on it. Like it just is floating on there. So I looked online. I looked in some reference books. I tried to find a picture of how this attaches, but I can't. So like most T-34s have like these fuel drums on the back here, and it's like the whole like side of it is different. There'll be like, this won't even be here, so I just could not find like a picture of this actually on here. Like I don't know if like there's like slots in the back and it just slots in, or if there's supposed to be some straps or brackets on the side. So it's another thing, like I don't know what to do. Like I might just leave it off again because it kind of looks weird. So there's just like a piece of wood just sort of floating on the side of the tank here. I'd like to put it on because again, like almost everything interesting has ended up being left off because it doesn't work, but haven't decided yet. The tow hooks, they give you a tow hook cable. Tow hook's another fussy thing I couldn't get to work. Like the metal, it's like a thick metal cable, and the metal wants to coil up, and it wasn't quite the right size to like fit. Like it needs to go from here, this hook, to this hook, and it's like exactly the right length, which means you have to like stretch out like the metal under a lot of tension, and it just doesn't look good. It just looks like it's like stretched out. Like what I should have done is like attach one of the hooks to like here, but I couldn't find an interesting place to like wrap the cable around because like the turret, I can't get tangled up in the turret. Like maybe I'll like coil it up and like, you know, like a garden hose is coiled up and just kind of hang it off somewhere. I'm not sure yet. Front here, this piece goes on here. It's just like barely doesn't meet each side. Maybe that's right. And then based on pictures, I think there's supposed to be like a weld here. So I added this weld. This is just some plastic, and then you put glue on it to soften it up, and then just kind of mash it to make it look like a weld line, like the back side upside down here. The weld line is here, but for some reason not here. Another possibility is like this is supposed to be part of this, like this is supposed to be all one big piece of metal, and you're supposed to fill that in and smooth it out, but they don't say, so I didn't know what to do. Looking back at the box, I don't know if this is just the way like the shadows on this are drawn, but this doesn't look the same at all. Like it looks like there's some kind of like weird notch here, and it like indents. I think this is a weld line though, so I'm not sure. I'm just not sure about that. What else about that? While we're talking about that, these tow hooks are different. Like here, there's these U-shaped brackets that go around. Here, there's no U-shaped brackets around them. They're just like directly on there. That's different. And also, this has like a number, like a turret number on there, like a cast number, I guess, from the metal. Interestingly, there's like this blurry smudge here, right here. So I don't know if that's supposed to be that number or not. Like the box doesn't mention that. And some of the kits I build, they do like say like, oh, cast weld number, and it's like on there and it looks really nice. So I don't know. I can't really complain about that because it's not on the instructions. This though, like this handle just shows up all of a sudden, this P26 handle, just in this last step, and there's no part P26. Like 100%, does not exist. that. The grab handle is on the side, so I guess like in this particular one, like they put all these handles on the side, and then the soldiers would just climb on and hold on to these handles. That's cool. I left off like some random handles to be like make it look more interesting. Like maybe they broke off, or maybe they didn't put them on. The front ones actually aren't on there because in the box, like they broke off, like they broke off the tree and were like damaged. So that's why those are off, but I sort of just used that as like an excuse to, you know, just make it kind of look random, make it look more interesting. Alright, we're getting towards the end here. Last page. And this just shows like the painting patterns you can use and like what decals to use. Here's the decals. There's a lot of options. I think these look nice. No, it's upside down. It's all in Russian, so I don't know what it actually says. So maybe I'll look online, or just do one of these, or just choose what looks the best. Alright, so that's all the steps. And I'll just show some close-ups here, give like a better idea of like what it looks like in terms of like quality of the plastic. This goes on. There are a ton of extra track links which you can't complain about, so I use some of them. So I've seen a lot of pictures, they just kind of randomly like will put these like just as spares, or they also thought they would have, like sort of like extra armor because it makes the metal thicker. A fun fact about that is like it actually they did a lot of tests later to see like how much it helped, and they found out it didn't really help at all, and sometimes it made it worse because in real life, like when a shell hits this, there's some chance it might ricochet off or bounce off. But for whatever reason, like this type of metal, I guess this not, because it's not actually armor, like when a shell hits this, it's way less likely to ricochet. So something that might have ricocheted instead just gets like straightened out and like goes right through. I just thought that was interesting. So this, okay, one last thing. I promise this is the last thing. So this piece looks really nice. It lines up basically perfectly on the back. Like these hinges look perfect. But on this side, there's a huge gap here. So I think these are brackets, so these brackets are supposed to be touching like here. Like they look like hinges, but if the hinges are on this side, there can't be hinges on both sides. So I think I'm gonna have to clamp this and then glue them down like this. We'll kind of bend it, but that'll look okay because like tanks get beat up and stuff. It'll just look bent and beat up. And then they do give you a plastic part to put into the headlight. A lot of times I leave those off because it's really hard to make them look good. And in real life, a lot of times, you know, they get broken, or they take them out because they were shiny. So at night, they didn't want stuff reflecting off of that. So that's a good excuse to just leave those off, but I'll try. And if it doesn't turn out, that's my excuse for leaving it off. Alright, I'll get some more light on here. Maybe this will make it better. Let's put a shadow on. But here's some close-ups here. Here's the back and turret. So next is the paint, and I think I should be able to make maybe not a video of me painting it, but I will definitely show like the final finished version. And also, you can check my Instagram for pictures of all the other stuff I built.